Chapter 4, verse 1. Perek Dalet Pasuk Aleph. Vahi Devar Shmuel L'chol Yisrael. And the prophecy of God, the word of God, came to Shmuel, and he would express it to all of Israel. This is a very strange opening statement to this parak. If you had a Masoretic text, you would see that there's a space between that opening phrase and the rest of the sentence. There's a disconnect between what's going to happen and the fact that Shmuel had divine revelation.
Between Vayi Devar?
No, there's a samach before that, which starts the 4th chapter. Then samach means it's a partial paragraph break. Vahi Devar Shmuel Chol Yisrael, and then there's another break. So it starts chapter 4, and it says the word of God was to Shmuel to share with all of Israel, and then there's a disconnect. Vayetze Yisrael l'klas Pelishtim la'milchama, and Israel went out to oppose the Pelishtim in a war. So what's the disconnect? They did not seek the advice of Shmuel. They did not seek the advice of Hashem. They just went out to fight the Pelishtim. Vayachnu al Even ha'ezer, and they encamped by a stone that was called the stone of Ezer. You know what Ezra means? Ezra means helps. Apparently, there was some reason to call this stone the stone of help. The Pelishtim chanu ba'afek, and the Pelishtim camped in Afek, a place called Afek. Vayarchu Pelishtim l'klas Yisrael, and the Pelishtim arrayed their army opposite Israel, facing the army of Israel. Vatitosha milchama, and the battle spread across a broad front. Vayinogef Yisrael l'fnei Pelishtim, and the Jewish army was defeated before the Pelishtim army. Vayaku b'marocha, and across the whole array, basadel, the fields, and they lost ka'arbas alofim ish. About 4,000 soldiers from the army of Israel were killed in this initial battle.
They didn't have a blessing.
They didn't seek the counsel of Shmuel before going out to war. And the army of Israel retreated back to its camp, its base camp. Israel. And the elders of Israel said, why did God cause our defeat today before the Philistines? Let us go to Shiloh and take from there as Avrum bris Hashem, the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark of the Covenant of God. And the Ark will come into our battle camp, and it will provide salvation from the hands of our enemy. And so they sent a delegation to Shiloh. And they took from the Mishkan in Shiloh the Ark of the Covenant of God, Yoshev HaKruvim, and where the Kruvim, the cherubs, were perched on top of the Aron. And there in Shiloh they encountered the 2 children of Eli, Imaron bris Elokim, and they took them, the 2 children of Eli, the Kohanim, brought the Aron bris Elokim. And who were the 2 children of Eli? Chofni and Pinchas, who we've read about already. And when the Ark of the Covenant of God arrived in the camp, and the soldiers of the army of Israel brought out a great cry. Some say it was a shofar, a trua, like we say on Rosh Hashanah, a trua. Some say it was just a shout. like a rebel yell, a shout, that they were heralding that the Ark of God had arrived in their camp. But the whole Haaretz and the earth shook from the blasting or from the shouting of the army of Israel. Vayishmu Pelishtim. And the Philistines heard the shouts or this blast from the Trua, Eskola Trua, the sound of this Trua. Vayomru, and they said to themselves, what is the reason for this great sound, this great shout from the army, even from the camp of the Jews? Vayedu, and then they realized, some say they spied it, or they realized what could possibly be the reason for this. Ki Aron Hashem ba'al machne, that the Ark of God had arrived at the camp of the army of Israel. Vayiru Pelishtim, and the Pelishtim became gripped with fear. Ki amru, for they said, Bo Elokim elamachne, the mighty God has come to the camp of the Jews. Vayomru, and they said, Oy lanu, woe is to us. Ki lo haiso kazos es Moshe shon. For yesterday, when we went into battle, the Ark of the Covenant of God was not with the Jewish army. Oy lanu, mi yatzilenu, woe is to us, who will save us? Miyad hu Elokim hu aderim ha'ela, from this all-powerful, mighty God. Elahem hu Elohim hamakim es Mitzrayim. This is the God that struck the Egyptians. B'chol makoba midbar, with all kinds of plagues, and took them through the desert. This is a very fearsome God. They said, how are we going to battle this God? And then they said to themselves, Hischasku, strengthen yourselves, they said one to the other. V'yula nashim Pelishtim, and become men, Pelishtim. Don't be meek, don't sneak away. Be macho, be men. Pen tavru pavdu lo ivrim. Lest we get defeated, we will have to serve the Jews. Kasher avdu lachem, just like they served us, we'll have to serve them. Let us arise to the occasion. Be men, and let us wage war against them. Do not be afraid. Do not melt away. Do not become weak-hearted. Fortify yourselves, strengthen yourselves, and let's go into battle. Vayilochamu Pelishtim, and the Pelishtim went into battle with that battle cry that they should be strong and fierce. Vayinogef Yisrael, and Israel again was defeated. Vayanusu ish laholav, and each man fled to his tent. That means they were routed. They fled the battlefield. And this they inflicted a great wound against a great strike against Israel. And 30,000 Jewish soldiers fell in battle. And the Pelishtim captured the Ark of the Covenant. And the two sons of Eli were killed, Chafni and Pinchas. Chazal tell us here that even though Chafni and Pinchas were, and we learned in the first or two prakim of Shmuel that they were sinners, and that they grabbed portions from the sacrifices before it was permitted to eat them, and some say they delayed the women from bringing their women who had given birth from bringing their korban, so that they would see them around the Mishkan and have the eye candy where it was. But here Chazal say, because the pasuk here, this sentence links the death of Chafni and Pinchas with the fact that the Aron HaKodesh was captured, to tell us that they died bravely trying to defend the Aron HaKodesh, and as a result, they were absolved of their sins. God absolved them of their sins because they died in battle defending the Aron HaKodesh, which they were unable to retain, and they lost it. And one man from the tribe of Binyamin ran from the array of the battle, and he arrived in Shiloh on that day. And his clothes were ripped. Some say his clothes were ripped because the fact that the Aron HaKodesh was taken, he rent his garments, and some say his clothes were rent from the battle. He came from the battlefield, and on the battlefield there was, sword fighting, and who knows what else, and his clothes got ripped. V'adamah Rosho, and there was dirt on his forehead. Again, he was in mourning for the loss of the Aron HaKodesh. Vayavo v'hine Eli Yoshev al hakisei. And he comes to Shiloh, where the Mishkan was, and behold, Eli is sitting on his throne as the Kohen Gadol and the Shofet. Yad derech mitzapeh. He had positioned himself at a place where he could see, or he could anticipate news arriving from the battlefield. Of course, he was much concerned because the Aron HaKodesh was taken to the battle. Libo chored al Aron HaElokim. His heart was trembling over the fate of the Holy Ark, of the Ark of God. V'ish bo lahagid bo'ir, and the man, the survivor from the battle, he came to tell everybody in the city. Tizak kol ha'ir, and a tremendous cry went up from the city of woe that the Aron HaKodesh was captured, that 2 sons of Eli were killed, and that the army sustained such a humiliating defeat. Vayishma Eli kol hatzokah, and Eli heard the cries of mourning and anguish. Vayomer me kol ha'amunah, what is the noise? What am I hearing? Vayish mihar, and the man quickly then went vayovo vayagid le'Eli, and he went to tell and report to Eli over what happened on the battlefield. Ve'Eli ben tishu u'shmona shnana, and Eli was 98 years old at this time. Ve'enov komo, and his eyes were, lifted up, and he couldn't focus. Lo yachol liros, he couldn't see. His eyesight had dimmed and become weakened, and maybe even he was totally blind because of his old age. Vayomer ha'isha le'Eli, and the man said to Eli, Anochi habo min ha'maracha, I am the man, I am the one, I am the refugee, that is survivor, that has come from the array of the armies facing each other. V'ani min ha'maracha nasti mahayom, and I escaped from that battle. Vayomer me ha'davar hapeni, what happened, my son? Vayan ha'mavaser, and the man who brought the news told Eli, Vayomer nos Yisrael lifnei Pelishtim. The army of Israel fled from before the Pelishtim. It was a rout. And there were great losses amongst the people. We lost 30,000 soldiers today from the battle, and yesterday we lost 4,000 others. And also your 2 sons, Eli, were killed. And the ark of God was taken, captured. Whoa. And when this survivor from the war came and told Eli, when he mentioned the ark of God, remember he was sitting on his sort of throne, and he fell backwards from the shock of the news. Bad Yad Hashar, which was in that place by the gate of Shiloh, in other words, right at the entrance, because he was sitting there to await news from the battlefield. Vatishover mefrakto, and his neck spine was snapped. Vayomos, and he died. Kizokin ha'ish, because he was very old and he could not sustain that fall back where the chair collapsed behind him. V'kovidhu, and he was very heavy, and so the weight of his body and the fall caused his neck to break. Uhu shofades Israel aboim shana, and he had judged Israel as the shofet for 40 years. The last of the shofet.
Well, this is so far a terrible chapter.
It's a terrible chapter.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit worse here in a moment. The Kalaso and his daughter-in-law, Ashes Pinchas. Remember, he had a son named Chafni, he had a son named Pinchas. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Pinchas, Hora, was pregnant. Lolas, to give birth. Vatishmas Shmuel, and she heard the terrible news. Eli lokach Aron HaElokim, that the Ark of God was taken in battle. Umes Chamia and her father-in-law Eli HaKohen died. The Isha and her husband Pinchas died. Vatichra, and she fell down to her knees. Vatelid, and she gave birth. Kinevku Olehot Sirel. And as a result of this collapse, something happened in her womb that twisted and I guess maybe caused her to rupture. Uke'es Musa, and she died from this terrible tragedy. Vataberna hanitzavos aleha, and all those who were standing over her, the midwives. Al tiri, do not be afraid. Ki ben yoladet, you gave birth to a son. V'lo onsa, but she didn't respond to that sort of good news. V'lo shoso libo, and she didn't set her mind to it at all. Vatikra lanar ikavod, and she called her son Ikavod. You know who that is? Ichabod. That's how the translation E is without kavod, honor, and in English they translate Ikavod to Ichabod. You heard of Ichabod Crane?
Oh,
This came a name in an English name, I guess. Not too many people are called Ichabod, but you know, maybe
Without honor.
maybe in Britain,
Without
Old England, they used to call
Without
people
glory.
Ichabod. What?
without honor, without glory.
That's right. More, what did she mean by that? Golo kavod Israel. The honor and the dignity of Israel was taken away. Al el hilakach aron Elokim, because the ark of God was captured and taken. V'el Chamia, and because her father-in-law died. The Isha and her husband died. Vayomer golo kavod. The honor of God of Israel, the honor of Israel was taken from it. And therefore she called the son Ikabod, without honor, or Ikabod in English, which means without honor. Ki nilkach aron Elokim, because the final or the greatest tragedy of all three was not that Eli died, was not that her husband died, it was that the ark of God, the symbol of Israel, of God's presence in Israel, was captured in battle.
Terrible joke.
Okay, now we'll go to chapter 5. And in chapter 5, things start to turn a little better.
Work of sin.
Talk about wars.
Chapter 4 was October 7th. Now we'll get into a little bit of post-October 7th. Uplishtim lachuas Aron Elokim. Now the Plishtim had captured and taken the ark of God. They took it from the battlefield. Remember, the army of Israel was encamped at Even HaEzer, the stone of salvation or of assistance. Ashdoda, they took it to Ashdod, which was one of the Philistine cities. And they took the ark of God, Vayaviu oso beis Dogo, and they brought it to the house of Dagon. Dagon was their idol, a big, tall idol. Vayatzigu also etzel Dagon, and they set it out, or they placed it before their great idol Dagon, as if to say, Dagon, you captured, you defeated the ark of the mighty God of Israel. Vayashkimu Ashdodim in Machras, but the next morning, when the people of Ashdod got up, V'hine Dagon nofel ufon of Arza, and Dagon had toppled over and was face down, Lifnei Aron Hashem, before the ark of God. Vayikhu es Dagon, Vayoshivo Solim Koma. So they re-erected Dagon and kept it stand right on its place. They picked it up and stood it up again. And again, it was standing there right near the ark of the covenant. The next morning they got up, and Dagon again toppled over and was on the floor. Its face was on the floor. It went face first on the floor. And it fell right before the ark of God. The Rosh Dagon, but the head this time of Dagon, in his two hands, Kuruso Salamithon, were detached, destroyed, Elamifton, by the floor. Rak Dagon Nisharalo. The only thing that remained was not his head, but his body. The body of the idol remained. The head was detached, the hands were detached, and it was lying face down right in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, because of this fact, Lo yidruchu kohani dogon v'chol haboim beis dogon al miftan dogon b'Ashdod ala yom hazeh. Because the idol fell over and its head may be rolled to the threshold of the entrance to this house of the idol, the priests of the idol of Dagon did not step over the threshold. They did not step on the threshold in Ashdod until this very day. They thought that there was something corrupt or evil or bad omen to step on the threshold where their idol's head rolled or fell until this very day, meaning until the house of Dagon ceased to be used as a temple for idolatry. Vatichpad yad Hashem alo Ashdodin. Not only did the idol Dagon topple over, but God's hand was heavy against the people of Ashdod. Vayishimein, and he caused death and deprivation to reign in the city. Vayachosam batachorim, and God struck them collectively with hemorrhoids. They didn't have any tucks, nor did they have preparation aid. So they got struck with hemorrhoids. It's Ashdod by Ashdod and all of its surroundings, all of its environs. The people were suffering massively from hemorrhoids. By Yeruan say Ashdod Kichain, and the people of Ashdod realized that it's something really amiss here. We don't want the ark of God to stay among the God of Israel to stay with us. For it has a heavy, strong arm. Oleinu, it's against us. While Dagon Eloheinu, and on Dagon our God, this God of Israel, this Aron HaKodesh, is causing great devastation amongst us. Our God fell before it. His head got detached. We are suffering terribly from different ailments, including extreme cases of hemorrhoid. Vayishlechu, and they sent it away. Oh no, sorry. Vayishlechu, and they sent a message. Vayasvus kol sarnei Pelishtim. They gathered all of the governors of the Pelishtim. Remember that our Pelishtim have 5 cities, and each city was a separate region, but it was a collective nation. And they gathered the princes or the leaders, the governors of each of the 5 sections of the people of Pelishtim. Vayomru, and they said, "What should we do? Manaseh la'aronu ke'Yisrael. What should we do with this ark, the ark of Israel?" Vayomru, and the officers of the Pelishtim, the governors, said, "Gat yisov aronu ke'Yisrael. Let's take the Aron HaKodesh to Gat." Gat was another one of the Pelishti cities. Azor, Gat, Dagon, whatever, they sent it to Gat. Vayasevu es Aron Yisrael, and so that's what they did. They took the Aron HaKodesh out of Ashdod, which was the first city that it was placed in, and they brought it to Gat. Vayichi achrei Sevu also, and when they brought the Aron HaKodesh to Gat, Vayitihi Yad Hashem ba'ir, u'humagedolah. And the hand of God struck the city with great confusion. Vayachas anshe ha'ir, and he struck the citizens of Gat, mikoton va'agodol, from the youngest to the oldest. Vayisharthru lahem techorim. Once again, they suffered severely from hemorrhoids. Vayishluchu es Aron l'kim Ekron. So they said, without any further ado, they sent the Aron HaKodesh to another one of the Pelishti cities, Ekron. Vayhi kivo Aron l'kim Ekron, and when the ark of God came to Ekron, vayizaku ha'ov Ekronim lemor, and the people of Ekron screamed loudly, "Hey, Sevu alayas Aron Yisrael hamiseni v'esami." You sent it here, you idiots! Why'd you send it here? We're gonna die, and our people are gonna suffer. Yeah. And therefore they sent Vayasus kol sarnei Pelishtim, and they gathered again all of the governors of the cities of the Pelishtim. Vayomru, and they said, "You know what? Shalchu es Aron Elokei Yisrael, send the ark back, the ark of Israel. V'yashov l'komo, let it go back to its place, meaning let it go back to Israel. V'lo yom isosi v'lo esami. And I, the townspeople of Ekron, or the leadership of Ekron, said, we will not die and we will not suffer. We will send the Aron HaKodesh back to Israel. Ki hoisa mehumas mobes b'chol ha'ir. There was a calamity of death that pervaded the city. Kovda ma'od yad Elokim sham, and the hand of God was even more severe there in Ekron. It wasn't just that they had to chorim, anoshim asher lo mesu, and the ones who didn't die, there were deaths. People were dying in the streets or in their homes. But the ones that weren't struck dead, they too suffered from hemorrhoids. And their cries and screams arose all the way to the heavens. Okay, so they tired of housing and keeping the Aron HaKodesh because of the great suffering that befell them, the plagues of hemorrhoids and death, and they decided to send it back to its source, to the land of Israel. But Vayhi Perik Vav, Vayhi Pasuk Aleph, chapter 6, verse 1. Vayhi Aron Hashem b'stei Pelishtim Shiva Chadashim. In this business of transferring the Aron HaKodesh from Ashdod to Ashkelon to Gath to Ekron took a period of 7 months. It took 7 months, for the transfer of the Aron HaKodesh from one city to the next city, plus it took 7 months for it to sink into them that this was not a good thing for them to keep the Aron HaKodesh. And they made the decision to send it back. Vayikru Pelishtim HaKohanim LaKosmim Lemor. And the Pelishtim summoned their priests and their nicantors, whatever it is, their magicians. Lemor, Ma na'aseh l'Aron. Hashem, what should we do to the Aron of God, the Ark of God? Hodi'unu, and advise us. How should we send it back to its place? How do we return this to Israel? Rayom, these priests and advisors and magicians said to the officers of the Pelishtim, if you're going to send back the Ark of God, the God of Israel, don't send it back empty-handed. Don't send it back bare. Just send back the Aron. You need to send also a guilt sacrifice. Then you'll be healed from your hemorrhoids. But and it will be known, if you do that, then you can count on the fact that God's hand will be withdrawn from striking you. And then they said, what kind of a guilt atonement, what kind of sacrifice, so to speak, shall we send? That we should send back to accompanying the Aron HaKodesh. And they said, it should be an atonement that corresponds to the 5 governors of the lands of the Pelishtim. Chamisha Techore Zahav. Very interesting what they chose to send back.
Were they told this is the Nazi, the leader of the
No,
Philistines that's given them this advice?
no, it's the priests and the magicians of the Pelishtim that they summoned their spiritual advisors, and they said, what should we do with this ark? It's wreaking havoc here.
Right.
And they said, you need to send it back, but you cannot send it back just bare. Send it back, put it on a train and send it back, or put it on a camel or a donkey or whatever, or in a wagon and put it. You have to send something to atone for your, sort of sense, misuse of the Aron. You placed it in your idols, in our gods' houses, and the Aron HaKodesh is very sensitive, and it doesn't want to be associated with our gods. So we need to send it back to the land where it is the God, where it is, enforced. And we should send 5 to Chorei Zahav. What is Techore Zahav? So the Mefarshim explained to us, mice made out of gold. L'kulam l'sarneim. Oh, sorry. So, Techorin, Zohov, the Chamisha, I'm sorry, different, what do you call it? What do you call like mice and rats and what? Rodents.
Here it
Five,
says 5 golden hemorrhoids and 5 golden
yeah,
mice.
5 golden hemorrhoids and 5 golden mice or rats. What does all this mean?
Propagators.
Because it says that when they suffered from hemorrhoids and they had blood flow from that nether region,
Right.
mice and rats came and ate up the blood or sucked up the blood. So they said, listen, let's send them the mice. Maybe that'll take care of everything. These people were very smart. Because even their princes and their regions were also suffering from these severe hemorrhoids, and they addressed it by saying, this is the punishment. What we need to do is atone. So if we're trying to atone, let us send back some symbolism of what we were struck with. I don't know how you send 5 hemorrhoids of gold, but whatever that is, they sent it. And they also sent back 5 forms of golden mice, or whatever, maybe rats, mice, rodents. Because this is what we suffered from. And make these forms of hemorrhoids and these forms of these rodents who are destroying our land. And that's how we can repay the God of Israel with honor. That which he struck us with, will send back in gold to accompany the holy ark. Maybe he then will lighten his hand that has been mighty against you, and from on your gods, and from on your land. Why should you harden your hearts? Kasher kibdu Mitzrayim, like the Egyptians hardened their hearts. Uparo eslibam, they hardened their hearts. In other words, don't remain indifferent to the plagues and the death that has been striking us, like the Egyptians ignored the 10 plagues, or 9 of them. Halo kasher hisalel bahem, just like God toyed and mocked the Egyptians until it finally sunk in. God has been toying and bringing plagues upon us or you, and therefore don't delay. Don't try to find another fix. Send the Aron HaKodesh back and try to placate the God of Israel. Vayishalchum, and they did that, and Vayeletu, and they went. This means not that the Aron HaKodesh was sent, but the advisors to the regents of the Pelishtim left. That was their final advice. They didn't elaborate, and they went. Then the Pelishtim said, now what we should do, let us take and make a brand new wagon. Hadashah echos. Ushtei paros olos, and 2 cattle, two cows or 2 bulls, whatever. Asher lo olah leim ol. They were never used. They were never worked. They're sort of virgin paros. Vasartem es paros bagola, and harness the cows or the bulls into the wagon. Vashivosem b'neihem u'miachreim abaysa, and return, accompany them, lead them and behind them, and send the wagons back. Ulakachtem es Aron Hashem, and take the Ark of the Covenant. Unasatem also el agola, and put it into the wagon. There's klei azov, in these golden, the osham, the atonement golden utensils, asher hashivosem lo osham, that we are now going to send back to Israel, to the God of Israel, as an atonement for what we did. Tosimu ba'argaz mitzido, put it in a separate box on the side of the Aron in the wagon. Ushulachtem also b'holach, and send it, and it will go. Meaning, no drivers, no leaders, just put it in this wagon, put the golden atonements in the wagon in a box, and leave it standing. the reason, and then we will see. Im derech gevulo yala Beit Shemesh, if it will head back to the boundary of Israel towards Beit Shemesh, who saw lanu is harong and dolan. So that'll be a symbol that the ark of God was the one that visited upon us all this evil, all this trouble, all this mayhem. V'im lo, but if it doesn't go by itself, v'yadanu kilo lo yodo nogabonu, we will then understand that it wasn't the ark's presence in our midst that caused all this mayhem. Mikrahu ayalanu, it was just a coincidence that both things happened at the same time.
How could they determine it was a coincidence? I mean, the ark fell on.
Yeah, but I'm saying, let's see what this ark can do. Can it find its way back home?
It was cows they were harnessed to the cows.
Yeah, like bulls to lead, that they used to drag. They used to use them to pull wagons.
Yeah.
Vayasu anoshim Canaan, that's what they did. Vayichu shtei paros olos, they took two cows that had never had a yoke on them. Vayasrum ba'agola, they've harnessed them into the wagon. Vespeneim kolu ba'bayis. They didn't let their children of the cows go along with them. They took them and they put them in a corral or in a barn somewhere. Why did they do that? Because they figured if the cows see their children meandering or wandering off, they'll chase after their children. And they didn't want the cows to have any impetus as to which way to go or to move. They wanted to see if the Aron HaKodesh was going to cause the cows to return to their place to move. Vayosim was Aron Hashem alo agola, and they put the Ark of God into the wagon. These argaz, these achbarei azov, salmei tochorim, and in this, I guess you might call it trunk, with these golden rodents and the forms of their hemorrhoids, the golden hemorrhoids. Vayisharna haparos baderech, and the cows started going straight on the road, al derech Beit Shemesh, on the road to Beit Shemesh, which is on the road back to Israel. B'mesila achas, in one straight line, one straight road. Holchu holoch, they continued to go. V'ga'o, they, I don't know they moved. I guess that's what cows do. They move, and that's what they did. They moved, and they just went forward. Below Saru Yominu Small, they didn't turn to the right or to the left, and they just went straight. The Sarnei Pelishtim holchu nachreim, and the regents of the Pelishtim followed behind the wagon ad gevul Beit Shemesh.
Wasn't the ark though in Shiloh?
Shiloh was destroyed. The Pelishtim destroyed Shiloh after they won the battle. Although it doesn't say exactly what happened to the Mishkan anywhere in Tenach, we understand that good parts of the Mishkan were destroyed.
The Philistines.
The Philistines destroyed good parts of the Mishkan. That's the general supposition or assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Some say they didn't, but it was left empty. The Aron HaKodesh was not there. Eli was dead. His sons who served there were dead. It was like a ghost town. So it was abandoned.
And Beit Shemesh.
Beit Shemesh was the, I guess, first settlement between where the Pelishtim had set up the Aron HaKodesh, and that was the first place, so they left it there. I mean, they headed there. Well, Beit Shemesh kotzim k'tzir chitim ba'emek, and the people of Beit Shemesh were harvesting the wheat, so it was around Pesach time. It was around Shavuos time. Chitim, sour and barley, the harvest is by Pesach, and wheat harvest is by Shavuos. So it was around Shavuot, and the Beit Shemesh kotzim, and they were there in their fields harvesting the wheat. Vayisu es einayim, and they lifted their eyes. Vayiru es haron, and they saw the ark arrive in Beit Shemesh. Vayisvachu l'ros, and they were very happy. V'ha'galo bo'o, and the wagon came. El Sedei Yehoshua Beis Hashimshi. He came to the I guess, the field of a man named Yoshua Beis Hashimshi V'atamu Sham. And it stopped. The wagon was going by itself all the way from the lands of the Pelishtim to this field which was in Beit Shemesh, and it stopped. V'sham Even Gedola. And there was a great stone there. Of course, there are great stones all over Israel, but there was a great stone there too. Vayivaku es hatzei ha'olah. And they broke apart the wood from the wagon, and they made a fire, and they offered the cows that were drawing the wagon as a korban olah to Hashem. V'halavim horidu es aron Hashem, and the Levites lowered or took the aron Hashem, ves argaz asherito, asher bo klei zohov. And the Levites took the Aron HaKodesh and the what do you call it, the ark, the container Asherito, which was with it, which housed the golden ornaments. By Yosimu ele Even Agdola, they put it by this large stone. Anshe Beit Shemesh helu olos vayizbuchu zevachim bayom ha'ul Hashem. And the people of Beit Shemesh brought thanksgiving sacrifices, olos. You know, an olah is a korban that is completely consumed on the mizbeach, and they also made zevachim, which were thanksgiving offerings on that day to Hashem. Okay, v'chamisha sarnei Pelishtim ro'u, and the 5 regions of the Pelishtim saw the Aron HaKodesh arrive in Beit Shemesh, because they were accompanying it from behind it. I mean, they obviously didn't get too close, but they kept an eye on it. By Yoshuvu Ekron, and they returned to Ekron. By Yomahu. Okay. Ve'ela Techori Halzohav, and these 5 golden hemorrhoid symbols, whatever, Asher Heshivu Pelishtim, which the Pelishtim had sent along as a asham, as an atonement for what they did in abusing the Aron HaKodesh, Osham Lashem. La'ashdod echad, there was one representing Ashdod. La'aza echad, there was one representing Aza.
Ashkelon.
Ashkelon echad, one was for Ashkelon. The Gat echad, and one was for Gat. Ekron echad. Those are the 5 cities of the Pelishtim, one corresponding to each city. Ekron. V'achburei azov mispar kol olei Pelishtim lachameshet soronim. Ir miftzor, but kofer ha'prozir. V'al odol ha'gedola, asher nichu oleo as Aron Hashem, ad hayom hazeh b'stei Yoshua Beis Hashimshi. And the golden rodents, which numbered a lot more than 5, because their numbers corresponded to all the cities of the Pelishtim, for each of the 5 regions, Me'ir Miftzar, from a fortified city, Ad Kofer HaPrazi, to an open city, Vad Ovel HaGedolah, and until the place, Ovel HaGedolah, the great place where they mourned. That was the great stone that they took it to originally. Ashenichu les Aron Hashem, which they placed the ark of God upon it. Ada Yom Hazeh b'stei Yoshua Beis Hashimshi, which remains today this large stone in the field of Yoshua Beis Hashimshi. Okay, now comes a big problem. Have a good week. Thank you for coming. Vayach Banshe Beit Shemesh. Now God strikes the people of Beit Shemesh. These are Jews. Ki ro ba'aron Hashem, because they looked at the Aron HaKodesh. This is a great, unbelievable. Vayach ba'om shivim ish v'chamishim elef ish. Now, it says here that God struck 70 people and 50,000 people. This is an astounding number, and there could not have possibly, at least the rabbis didn't understood, there weren't 50,000 people in Beit Shemesh. I don't even know if today there are 50,000 people.
No, there's probably
Considerably less.
more.
Than 50,000?
Probably over 100, around 100.
You think so? I don't know. Anyway, whatever it was, the rabbi said Beit Shemesh in those days did not have 50,000, and therefore it says that God struck 70 people who were so chashuv, so important and so righteous that they were equal to 70,000, or to 50,000. These 70 were equal to 50,000 people in their righteousness and their piety and their greatness. And this was a great blow to the people. And the people of Beit Shemesh says, who can be in the same place before God and this great God? And where should we take the Aron HaKodesh? We are unworthy of housing the Aron HaKodesh. And they sent messengers to the dwellers of a place called Kiryat Ye'arim, the city of Ye'arim. Lemor Heshivu Plishim Es Aron Hashem, Ridu Halu Oso Alechem. Go down and take the Aron HaKodesh to your place, to your town, Kiryat Ye'arim.
There was some commandment that we're not supposed to look on the Aron.
Yeah, we don't look at the Aron HaKodesh. If you remember, well, you don't remember. Later on, we will learn about how when David Hamelech was taking the Aron HaKodesh to Jerusalem, he too put it in a wagon, or had it put in a wagon. Mm-hmm. And as it was going, the oxen that were leading the wagon stumbled, mm-hmm. and the Aron HaKodesh and the Agalot tilted.
Right.
And Uzzah, who was accompanying the Aron, in a knee-jerk reaction, reached out to grab the Aron HaKodesh because he thought it was going to fall for that split second, and he dies on the spot. The Aron HaKodesh you don't tamper with. How many of you saw the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah. You're not, they looked at it at the end, and he said, "Don't look at it."
Right. So I'll tell you a little story. When my son was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, I said to him, David, let's go. I wanted him to see he wanted to see Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You did too?
Well, I did. I saw it with him.
It's a good movie.
Well, listen to what happens. I said to him, in this movie, you will see the awesome power of Hashem. You will see the awesome power of the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark. He says, what do you mean? Superman is much more powerful than God, than Aron HaKodesh. He can leap tall mountains. He can fly. He's impervious to all kinds of things. Superman is really top notch. Well, when we walked out of that movie, he says, Abba, boy, is Hashem more powerful than Superman. It was a great lesson. Okay, that's what happens. That's what happens when you abuse, tamper with, look at improperly, without being a high priest or without being fit for it. It brings upon you calamity. So the people of Kiryas Ye'arim responded to this plea that they come. And they took the Aron Hashem, also Avinadav Bagiva. And they brought it to the house of this man named Avinadav. Yes, Elazar beno and his son Elazar, Kitchu Lishmor as Aron Hashem. They consecrated them, they segregated them, they designated them to guard the Aron HaKodesh, meaning to make sure that it was kept holy, that nobody just came and it wasn't a tourist attraction, and nobody just came to look at it or to abuse it or to use it or to move it or do anything. Keep it safe, keep it sound, keep it, segregated and dedicated only for itself, for its own purpose.
Should have its own kedusha.
Right. So you see, the people of Kiryat Ye'arim, they paid proper respect to the Aron HaKodesh. So from the day that the Aron HaKodesh arrives in the house in Kiryat Ye'arim and then is entrusted to Avinadav and his son Elazar, Torah B'Kiryas Ye'arim, Vayirbu Hayomim, in the days past. What does this mean in the days past? Nothing untoward would happen. There was peace. Nothing, no calamity befell them.
20 years.
Vayu Esrim Shana, and it stayed in Kiryat Ye'arim for 20 years. Vayinahu Kol Beis Yisrael Achrei Hashem. And all of Israel followed after Hashem. Okay, we'll stop here. It's a little bit early. We're up to 3. We'll start again this parak, because I don't want to get too deep into this parak before we have to break, because our time is up. So what do we see from all of this? We see the awesome power of the Aron HaKodesh. We see the awesome effect of tampering with it, of misusing it, of abusing it, of not paying it the ultimate respect that it demands, and not treating it with great dignity and with great awe. That's what happens when you toy with, in a sense, the Aron HaKodesh.
And the people
You see?
didn't consult
We
Ellie
see,
and
yes,
the other-
we see that the people, before they went to war with this disastrous war, where they lost so many soldiers, and Hophni and Pinchas were killed, and the Aron HaKodesh was captured, because they did not seek counsel from Shmuel. There was a disconnect between what they did and the advice and the mentorship of Shmuel HaNavi. So that's another consequence of when you have a prophet in your midst, and you have a momentous decision to make about going to war, or the methodology of going to war, which way, which route, which strategy, and you have a Navi, a messenger of God who has divine revelation, you got to be foolish not to take advantage of that.
We haven't even mentioned his name in these last few.
No, because he was disconnected from this whole story.
Yeah.
Reminds me of, I wrote an article on Milchemes Mitzvah. That means mandatory war that we're obligated to fight. And Milchemes HaRashos, permissive wars, which we are not obligated to fight. There's a big debate, not really much of a debate, but there are some who want to suggest that you have to consult with the Urim V'Tumim, the breastplates on the Urim, in the breastplates on the ephod of the apron of the Kohen Gadol, which would light up and send messages if there was a national issue that was raised by the Kohen Gadol and from the Urim V'Tumim, he would get an answer by the light up the letters of the names of the 12 tribes and the 3 patriarchs, which contain within them all 26 letters of the alphabet of the Jewish alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. That way you can get an answer from the Urim V'Tumim. The question is, do you have to consult with the Urim V'Tumim before going to war? So, in the Sefer HaMitzvos, the Rambam makes an oblique reference that you need to have the Kohen Gadol before you go to war. But that is talking about a permissive war. Do you have to consult the Urim V'Tumim? As a result of that statement by the Rambam, we have no way to go to a permissive war today for 2 reasons. We don't have a Sanhedrin to declare the war, and we don't have a Urim V'Tumim to sanction the war. No permissible wars. But we still have a din of Milchemes Mitzvah, an obligatory war, because that's a mitzvah. And the Rambam defines an obligatory war as 3 possibilities. The war against the 7 nations to conquer the land of Israel, the war against Amalek, which is generational, and the war to defend whenever Israel, the land of Israel, and Jews are attacked by a Gentile nation. Those are 3 times of Milchemes Mitzvah. That 3rd category incorporates what Hamas October 7th, what Hamas has done. Really, it incorporates the 75-year history of Israel since the state of Israel. We are in a perpetual war with these mamzerim, and it has never ended. I mean, we have paused from fighting, and they have maybe, but every day they're trying to kill us, Every day they're trying to dispossess us. Every day they're attacking our sovereignty, our state, our people. And so we are in a perpetual Milchemes Mitzvah. We are under attack. Do you need to consult the Urim V'Tumim for such a war?
No.
How do you know you don't? It's real simple. Do you consult with the Urim V'Tumim if you should keep Shabbos? It's a mitzvah to keep Shabbos. Do you consult with the Urim V'Tumim if you should wave the lulav and esrog on Sukkot? No, because that's a mitzvah. You don't consult the Urim V'Tumim when it's a mitzvah. You consult the Urim V'Tumim maybe which route should we take in the war? Which strategy should we employ? Should we fall back or should we press our attack? Those are things you can ask the Urim V'Tumim. As to whether or not we go to war to defend our people in the land of Israel, no question to ask because it's a Milchemes Mitzvah.
The question on the Haredim that don't go.
It's a big question. You know what it really is? It's an irrefutable question, an unanswerable question, because they have no defense. The only defense they have is that the army is not ready to receive us. B, the army will not adhere to our spiritual strictures, and they will seek to undermine our spirituality and our performance of mitzvahs. And as a result, we cannot go to war. We cannot go to the army. But that's not the answer. Why not? Because just like if they encountered a difficulty in performing any other mitzvah, they would find a solution. They're not going to say, oh, the Romans said we can't keep Shabbos. Okay, we won't keep Shabbos. They don't say that. They find ways to go around the decree of the Romans. They want to keep Shabbos, they keep Shabbos under stress, under terrible situations, maybe even under threat of death, but they keep Shabbos. If you have a mitzvah, Milchemes mitzvah, by the way, in a milchama, in a war, you can't claim the pikuach nefesh. You can't claim, oh, I'm not going to war because I don't want to risk my life. It's a risk of life. When you have a milchama, when you have a mitzvah to go to war, you don't stop and say, well, I'm going to die or I might die. That's not a defense to a Milchemes mitzvah, because always soldiers unfortunately die in battle, as we see on Hayom HaZeh. So that's not a defense that they might die. But what could be a defense? Maybe we don't have to, because they're going to try to undermine our spirituality. Well, find a fix. En masse. Go to the army, go to the state and say, listen here, we have a mitzvah to fight. We want to fight. Here's the conditions in which we can come into the army. We want to have an absolute observance of Shabbos, absolute observance of kashrus, absolute separation of the sexes, absolute not having to participate in a performance where women will sin. We don't want women commanders telling us what to do because we want it to be segregated. We'll accept orders from male. We will not accept orders from females. It'll become too corrupting. They have, and then maybe they have other conditions. They could elaborate, enunciate, set forth their conditions, present that to the army and to the government, and say, these are the conditions which we can go to war and fulfill our obligation as a Milchemes mitzvah. What do? No, they just retreat into their base Midrash, and they don't offer a solution to this problem, whereas any other mitzvah that runs into a blockage, they find solutions and workarounds, and they figure out ways to fulfill the mitzvah. Here they don't.
I heard a complaint that the army, by nature, has not been very amenable to
That's right.
accommodate.
And
that's probably a critique on the army too.
Of course, it's a critique on the leftist controlled army. This leftist controlled army is one of the last bastions of the leftist power in this country. They have the Supreme Court, the army. Those are the two bastions of leftist power in this country. Hopefully Rotman and the Knesset will undermine that and slam it home. Hopefully the Knesset will remove that moronic attorney general or leftist attorney general. Hopefully we're on the right path, and hopefully as a result of the war, there'll be new parties formed with Chayalim who were Moser Nefesh, and a good percentage of them coming from the observant community, we'll have a new party that will blaze a trail of restoring sovereignty, restoring religiosity, and diminishing, and if not removing completely, the control of the left. Ezrat Hashem.